Wherever you are in the world. And welcome to our distinguished guests and AI enthusiasts globally to our virtual event on sustainability for AI, sponsored by Roc Search. My name is Danny Cohen. I'm the US head of Roc Search. A quick introduction to us. We are a global staffing technology and engineering specialists with true expertise in the AI ML data space. I have the honor of kicking today's event off and introducing our host, but I'm really thrilled that you all have the time and you've taken out the time today to join us. In this ever-evolving age of technology, the integration of AI has become increasingly prevalent in our daily lives. But as we embrace the power of AI, it is crucial to consider its impact on our planet and the importance of sustainable practices. Today, we're meeting to explore the intersection of AI and sustainability, where cutting-edge innovation meets responsible stewardship of our environment. Together, we will delve into the fascinating ways in which AI can contribute to a greener future and help address some of the pressing challenges we face. Our esteemed panel of experts and industry leaders will share their insights, experiences, and groundbreaking initiatives that are shaping the landscape of sustainable AI. This event is not just about knowledge sharing. It is also about fostering collaboration and inspiring action. Together, let's discover how we can leverage AI to create a better and brighter and more sustainable future for generations to come. So without further ado, let's embark on this enlightening journey of exploration and discovery and get ready to be inspired, informed, empowered to make a difference. Welcome to our virtual event on sustainability for AI. And welcome to a dear friend, Wendy Howell. Wendy will be our host for today. Wendy is a dynamic technology sector leader and CEO of the Executive Network Council. She has played pivotal roles in M&A, Chief of Staff, and Service and Business unit management, fostering success throughout impactful tenures at Octel, Lucent, Veritas, Symantec, and Cisco. Wendy's career is defined by a dedicated focus on aligning global initiatives with strategic visions and navigating complex organizational landscapes with a blend of big picture strategy and focused execution. Beyond the corporate realm, Wendy's commitment to social causes is how I actually met her a few years back, is evident in the active role she plays on the board of Girls in Tech, the Kindness Campaign, STEM Scouts, Girl Scouts, Connect Her, and Robotus. This dedication empowers her to contribute meaningfully to the community and advocate for impactful change, particularly in fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Danny, also known as one of my brothers. And I'm so excited to see this group of truly, truly amazing leaders for our conversation today. What I would like to do is start off with each of our wonderful speakers doing just a bit of an overview, background introduction of themselves. And I also like to always start off with a fun or interesting fact about yourself that maybe the audience might not know if they've only looked at your LinkedIn profile. So I'm going to go immediately to Rika because you're right in the middle of my screen. So Rika, would you mind just doing an introduction of yourself and share some fun and interesting fact? And I dare say the more weird or funky the fact, the better. And there'll be a winner of the most funky fact. How about
that? Well, I don't know if it's weird or funky. It's a fun fact, maybe. So I've always had vertigo. Actually, I don't think anybody here knows this. So including this inner circle here, I've had vertigo and I've had a fear of heights since I was a little kid. Every time I was in sports, it was very land-based. And when I was dating over a decade ago, one of the dates that I had was to go to a climbing gym. This is in the Bay Area. So I said yes, because I really wanted to go on this date. And so went to the climbing gym and realized what I had gotten myself into. And then I resolved and said, okay, this is going to be one of the ways that I get over my fear of heights. And soon after that, just even after the date didn't really work out, I continued to do rock climbing and have been very passionate about it. The pandemic did put a huge dent in my diligence on rock climbing, but there's a lot that I think you can learn about life and yourself in general doing rock climbing, because when you're on the wall, it's physics. It's your ability to move your strength from place to place, and it's about your breath against the wall and in nature. So it's really a beautiful sport if any of you have not done it before. So It's a fun fact.
Fantastic.
How fun
And
was
no one
that?
cares about the date. You like had a lot of growth there. So, and what about share maybe a little bit about your background
Yeah,
from
so
a career perspective?
sure. I'm an investor. I invest in women-founded startups. I'm a limited partner with one VC and venture studio with another, and an investor with a third one. I am also an author. I've written a couple of books, one about women on boards, and a book recently on the pandemic and sustainability. And I'm an executive corporate leader. I'm a group vice president with an NTT, where I'm leading some of the ways that we bring emerging technologies to market to achieve impact and outcomes, and sustainability is a big part of that. So that's
Yes.
it.
So sorry to the audience that we have, people that are so lazy on our panel today. I think this is going to be fabulous. And if I may go to Saurabh, if you would give us a little bit of background on yourself and your fun fact, or one of your many fun facts, I'm sure.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Again, I remember a funny story from my school days. So I was in grade 11th, and again, I was a science student, and I would say a lot of interest in mathematics and science. But we had a very deep, I would say, syllabus for literature, and I just couldn't get Shakespeare, and I ended up dropping out of school in like couple of months. And the interesting story is this is like 20 years back, and very recently I started writing short stories. And I have no background in literature. Short stories on human emotions. It's like my observation of the society, my observation of the complex relationships between the humans. So I started writing it, and from there I've started putting it into a form of poetry. Now I have no interest in the past. I've never done it, but now I do it, and it gives me a lot of happiness in my free time. So this is
I love
something.
that. We look forward to your book on poetry, I will tell you. And
I
just a
don't know.
little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure.
Rob, if you
So,
would.
so just to give some background, I work for Dell Technologies. I'm a director data science here. I carry the applied AI engineering and research team. I I do effective partnership with academic and industry. I work at the intersection of vision language model, and the whole idea is to evolve machine intelligence and create human business partnership, creating value and transforming finance as a whole. So that's pretty much my background.
Love that. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Heather, I would love to go to you next, if you would.
Sure. My name is Heather Lutz. I am the Director of Engineering for the data space for Datasite. And for my fun fact, I'm going to actually lead off that last one. My background actually is in literature. My undergraduate degree is in English, and it was specifically in Old and Middle English and the evolution of the English language.
Wow.
I actually leveraged that background for a couple of years. So right out of school, I was actually an educator. I was a teacher. I did ESL and EFL before changing my career and going to a boot camp almost a decade ago now. So
I love that. It's like a giant pivot, right?
It was a
for
giant
almost everyone. That's fantastic. Anything more on your background with Datasite?
Yeah, so on Datasite, I've actually been with Datasite now for most of my career. I started here as a junior engineer, worked my way up all the way to a senior engineering position, but I was one of the individuals instrumental in setting up a lot of our operational data, what became our analytical store, helped build that from the ground up. And I currently lead data analytics, data engineering, and some of our ML ops efforts for Datasite.
Fantastic. You are Miss Data and Miss ML. I love that. We have such a really great, diverse crowd here today. So Deidre, if I may go to you as well, same thing, same story, a little background and a little fun fact.
A little fun fact. Vertigo, Rika. Too. And I decided that I would deal with vertigo in a little dramatic way. I decided I would climb Kilimanjaro because that would help me deal with my vertigo. It didn't solve the vertigo problem, unfortunately. I still have vertigo. But like Rika said, you learn a lot about yourself when you're out there on your own. And the thing that is rivaled by that is probably the fact that I read everything in sight continuously. I probably read around 180 books a year. And that is just something I do because I'm constantly having to know things and learn things. And I hate being the dumbest person in the room.
A lifelong learning is one of,
Yep.
I mean, my core values. So I think that's fantastic.
I think
and
I'm
just a little bit about your
My husband
background.
calls me nosy.
Yes, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And what about your background of what you're doing today, Deidre?
So my background is really working in transformation and post-merger integration or post-acquisition integration. That's my sweet spot, and I love it, primarily in the tech sector, but have worked across multiple industries, and that flows into everything I do. I work for a nonprofit as well, my side hustle. And that's also about tech and sustainability and education and curiosity.
This is a group of very like-valued people. We're sisters in M&A. I've done loads and loads and loads of M&A post-integration, et cetera, post-merger integration. So we could chat about that for hours. And my other sister, Wendy Turner Williams, if you would introduce yourself, the other Wendy.
Yes. The Wendy Club today. So I have had about 20 plus years in data and AI, working at some of the biggest brands in the world associated, like Microsoft, Tableau, Salesforce, where I was the chief data and AI officer. Today, I'm focused on actually a nonprofit called the Association, which I formed just last year, which is focused on the AI implementers. So anyone in the fields of AI, data, ethics, privacy, robotics, or security, and making sure they have a safe, neutral platform to share ideas, find jobs, education, and more importantly, to actually create technical implementation standards that help us to scale to meet regulatory needs around the globe. On top of that, let's see, fun fact about me. Let's see, I guess I'll ride the education background. I have a Russian history degree. I don't know what that has to do with my background, but or where I've been working most of my career. But but like Heather, I kind of got lucky in regards to coming out of college. I got hired as a tech writer at a telecom company my senior year of college, and came in and worked for that particular solution, and made friends with the IT department. And I think within my first year, I was recruited to engineering, and I've been in engineering ever since. So I tell my kiddos, it doesn't matter what your degree's in, because they want to know, like, I don't know what to do with my life. And I was like, I don't know what to do with my life either. And I'm old now. So, it's like, you just go through the college, you go through the motions, and you'll figure it out, make your own life, open your own doors. So
that's so true. I've done so many panel discussions where it is show of hands. What did you study in university? And are you pursuing what you studied in university? And it's usually 20% or less, quite frankly. So, and there's another thread here. I see another friend. So my husband was a Russian linguist in the military intelligence as well. So we've got that going for us.
Nice.
So now that we know all these amazing people that are going to be chatting and sharing their wisdom and knowledge, I want to start off. I'm going to start off with Rika. I want to pose a question to you, and please, all panelists, feel free to jump on if there's something else you want to say about a particular topic, or if you want to offer an alternative view, please feel free. We love this organic sort of growth of the discussion. So Rika, we're talking about, like, if you think about it in the grand scheme of things, there's people, we talked about this before you came on, AI is the best thing in the world. There's absolutely nothing that can go wrong with AI, or AI is the most horrifying thing in the world and the robots are going to eat us and no one is going to have jobs left. So if you think about, like, I call it not necessarily dangers, but maybe risks that you see that aren't necessarily dominating the headlines right now, what are some underlying things that maybe we as a society, or as those that work in this space, are not necessarily thinking about, or what else should we be thinking about from a risk and maybe compliance perspective?
Well, I have this provocation that AI is indeed dangerous, but not for the reasons I bet you think. And the most people think of the danger of AI around the risks of it being really around bias or the challenge to climate because of the huge amounts of energy that people know that the current form of at least Gen AI, and I should also preface this to say with AI, while the headlines have really blossomed within the past couple of years, AI has been around for 70 years or so. It's
Exactly.
really the most recent forms of training models and LLMs and ChatGPT that's captivated everyone's imagination. I think the headlines, like typical media, have really created an overextension of some of the panic that necessarily needs to happen. But my point is that AI is actually quite dangerous. But the reason I make that statement is less about the dangers that you read the headlines about, but because of the fact that our obsession with digital and all of the different ecosystem parts of AI that we understand today, and especially in the technology world, is running our obsession, our focus on that is running us the risk of not paying attention to innovation and technology that's 4 billion years old. In other words, nature. And so there's a lot of technology and innovation that exists in organic matter that is intelligence itself. And so hence the term organic intelligence that I trademarked when I was thinking about this specific area. The best example I can give you, actually there's two. One is around photosynthesis. So we all learn photosynthesis in 5th grade. But if you look beneath the hood on photosynthesis, physicists still don't understand the physics of the electron movement in the leaf. They understand how the breakdown happens of the water molecules and the chemicals that are involved in that. But what they don't understand specifically is the physics of the electron and the movement. So imagine if we could capture that, if we could really understand it and bottle it, might that help us achieve some of the outcomes around energy? Another really good example, which I think is fun, and it comes from my home country of Japan. In the year 2000, some researchers demonstrated that something as simple as slime, if you leave it to its own devices, it will find its most efficient way through a maze. And if you leave it long enough, it will map out a transportation system that looks like a modern subway system. And I'm simplifying these examples immensely, but it's to get the point across that yes, AI, in my esteem, is important towards sustainability outcomes, but we need to marry it with intelligence that has existed within the technology of nature. So combining those things together is how we'll bring that forward. So that's a part that I don't think comes up enough in ways that I think will help us figure out how we do that as organic beings ourselves. And if you think about AI mapping similarly to how we compute in our skulls here, then then we start to see where that starts to get integrated.
I love that. And if I may just plug, I do know for a fact that there is a new book coming out on that concept of organic intelligence. So stay tuned for a theater, coming soon to a theater near you. She is in the throes of writing another book. Fantastic. Saurabh, if I can switch over to you for a minute, we're touching on like high level. If we get into generative AI specifically, obviously, it introduces rapid task acceleration, which is brilliant news, great cost savings, great productivity, efficiencies. But underneath it, what does that mean to the workforce? When we talked at the beginning, it's like, oh, is everyone going to lose their jobs? Oh, am I going to now be open up to be focused on more strategic thinking versus, mundane task-oriented things? Just what are your thoughts on that and the future of work as related to this?
Sure. So I'm very optimistic about generative AI, and I first want to talk through the opportunities, then challenges, and then okay, how can we mitigate that, right? So the opportunities that I see is enhanced productivity. I mean, in our jobs, there is an opportunity where we can automate routine and mundane tasks, repetitive tasks, which will give employees to focus on more complex, creative, and strategic activities. Our main skill set for our human race is cognitive thinking. So it gives us more time to actually solve problems. The second area that I see is it's going to create massive jobs. Yes, those jobs will require new set of skill set, and this can lead to the creation of new job categories. There will be opportunities for growth, people working especially in the data space to work on a lot of different kind of data analytics and AI jobs will come up. Then there is an opportunity for upskilling and reskilling. employees will have the opportunity. It's always fun to learn new things, right? And be more creative, again, making them more adaptable and valuable for the society, right? Then there's an opportunity for cost efficiency. Now, by reducing the time and the resources on certain activities, organizations can allocate their budgets more effectively. They can invest in new areas, potentially on new products will come up, new work. I mean, there will be new spaces in workforce development, employee benefits. We will have more leisure time, right? And there are other areas that will directly benefit the workspace. Now, again, having said opportunities, there will be certain challenges for sure. There will be job displacement. Some of those old jobs will, or which is highly repetitive, might need transformation, and which will require minimal human intervention. Skill gap. There may be growing skill gap as the demand for AI related skill set will outpace the current supply of qualified people. There will be ethical and social implications. The rapid deployment of AI technologies will raise a lot of ethical questions: privacy, surveillance, how the decisions are made, right? AI systems need to be designed and implemented in a way that respects everyone's rights and dignity. Now, there are certain mitigation strategies that I see. I mean, I would definitely feel there is a lot of work to be done on policy intervention. I think there is a huge responsibility for government and regulatory bodies to introduce policies that encourage responsible AI. It's I would say, a very important field where a lot of investment and focus needs to happen. It will protect workers from getting displaced. It will support education and training programs to bridge the skill gap. I would also consider organizational change management as very important. I mean, we need to develop comprehensive change management strategies that includes employee engagement, transparent communication, support systems to those workers who are actually affected by AI integration into the systems. Continuous learning culture. I mean, we spoke about lifelong learning. I think this needs to be, we need to create that culture of continuous learning and innovation within the organization. I mean, reward people who even fails but tries new thing, right? And to remain competitive in their careers. And definitely, I would say ethical AI development practice. This I consider as the most important thing. We have to focus on diversity in teams, include fairness, transparency, accountability, and that will potentially mitigate any, I would say, negative impact on the workforce.
I love that. And it's this culture not only of ongoing lifelong learning, upskilling, et cetera, but culture of innovation, so that the entire entity is sort of moving together and moving forward. I'm gonna go to Heather next. So, in your current or future technology workforce, which roles do you think will benefit the most from AI and ML? And I'm going to address that to both Heather, and I think I'm going to ask Wendy to comment as well. But Heather, if I may go to you first.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really tough question, because I think so many roles are going to be benefiting from leveraging AI ML technologies as they come through. It's been called like our industrial revolution, and there's a good reason for that. It's in large part because of its large mass effect. And I will also add on to the previous answer to say that in addition to productivity, I think you also get a lot of job satisfaction. I mean, it makes it a lot easier, because my background is in engineering, if I don't have to worry about boilerplating, if I don't have to worry about tracking meeting minutes, if I don't have to worry about the multiple common analytics questions that people direct to my team, if they have AI tools that they can leverage to just look at that themselves, that allow people who maybe aren't as data literate as some others to have some help with that and bring that to their fingertips so they can get better insights. That not only helps these folks address their concerns and being able to get answers faster, but it then helps my teams be able to spend our time working on some of those more difficult questions, maybe where the data is not, where we have to do a lot more work. So items like that. So the one item that did come to mind, and honestly only because it's something that has been on my mind a lot in terms of how we could use AI more, would be almost in production support and engineering. So in addition to all that boilerplating and stuff
Yes.
that you would no longer have to do, as you have systems and architectures for applications that scale, when you first start, you have a handful of services and you have a grand total of maybe 4 engineers who know absolutely everything. Something breaks, they can immediately point to it and say, oh yeah, it was this thing. Hang on, we'll have it fixed in the next 30 minutes. Great, lovely. As your systems scale, it becomes impossible to do that. You're more siloed. And suddenly you have this outage where it's not one problem. It is the confluence of so many other issues, the tech debt that you never wanted to get to from the last, 6 months plus, that is now coming back. And to be able to have something, to be able to look through all of that data, all of the errors, all of the failures through an accumulation of a while to say, okay, maybe look here, look in this area. This could be potentially what is slowing you down and what caused it. So even something like that, I could see AI being used for. I don't think there is a single role that will not be touched in a technical organization, mostly in good ways.
Agreed. And thank you. Positive. And please, Wendy. And then I see folks in the audience who do have questions, so we'll come to you in just a few moments. Go ahead, Wendy, please.
Sounds good. Just to add on a little bit, frankly, I think that there's not a role who won't be touched by AI.
That's right.
We're talking about Heather was talking about the technical impacts for some of the technical teams, but frankly, everyone will be using AI. I think AI is a tool, right? This is a new tool for our toolkits. And whether you're a business team, whether you're a non-professional, whether you're a technical person or not, I think AI is a part of our future and a part of our roles for the beginning, going forward. Just to kind of back up on what was talked about earlier, I think this is why data literacy is so important. Why business fluency is so important. You have to actually have this intersection between business literacy, data literacy and business fluency, where you actually understand what your business is trying to achieve and what its objectives and strategies are. And you need to know more about the data in order to actually make sure that you're kind of like sanity checking against what AI is asking you to do or doing, etc. So I think there's a lot of, I think all roles are going to be impacted. I think there's all new kind of tool sets and skills that people are going to have to really kind of double down on. When we just talked about is doubling down on the data, right? you got to understand the data. You got to data down.
It's all about the data. That's right.
It's all about the data. You got to data down on that. But you need to understand things like critical thinking and problem solving. I think creativity is going to be, really, really important. But I also think that back to, continuous learning, which we talked about at the beginning, people are going to have to continuously learn because the AI is. Right. So our jobs are going to keep evolving and keep evolving and keep evolving, and keep opening new areas. I think this is where we actually not only data down, but we also kind of double down on the human. Right. I think those of us who really kind of focus more on, what do you want to say, communication and collaboration, even empathy or digital empathy.
Exactly.
Right. It's become more and more and more important.
Great word. That's huge.
Very important.
Exactly. And Deidre, I want to sort of pick your brain for a few minutes on going slightly different direction. We were talking a lot about the skills of the future and this ongoing innovation, ongoing learning, and these new, almost like digital EQ skills, I guess I would call them. But Deidre, in your perspective, what ways do you think AI can contribute to sustainable and inclusive employment practices? And obviously, if the model is bad, then we're going to have a bad result. But what are your thoughts on that topic?
I think the model being bad is something that's real. And I think there needs to be a lot of governance around models, the way they were deployed. And I kind of want to touch on something Wendy said a little earlier. Human centricity has to be considered at the design phase and at the implementation phase, and in every aspect thereafter that one does anything with AI. Because without that, the biases we have, and let's be real, we're human beings, everybody has
Exactly.
unconscious biases.
That's right.
Whether or not you know it, whether or not you admit it, we all have them. It's a product of our environment, of our growth, and it's just even in the basics of the way that we learn. We need to make sure that we don't perpetuate what we already carry around with us. I think there's opportunity for AI to help us from that perspective. So if I think about recruitment, the AI algorithms can remove bias by focusing on skills as opposed to demographics, by focusing on qualifications, not some of the arbitrary data that end up in resumes. I think that creates opportunity for us to have better representation from underserved communities, for example, which is amazing for us. It gives us an opportunity to pick up people from marginalized communities. And it certainly helps us make sure that we are attracting diverse talent. In addition to that, when we talk about the sustainability angle, there's really opportunities for diverse talent to emerge because we're creating jobs as a result of sustainability continuously. And AI can help us to find people that we can put into those roles. If I think about accessibility, not all disabilities are seen, and we make assumptions based on what we see. It's really important for us then to tap into the diverse talent, and AI can help us do that. Because when you're not focused on what you can see, and when there's less bias in the models and the algorithms, it gives you opportunity to tap into a workforce you would never have naturally had access to previously. So I think that's really crucial for us. I think there's also opportunity from a learning perspective, and we talked about this a little earlier on, right? My nosiness or curiosity.
Right.
There's opportunity to use the models now to upskill people continuously. But more importantly, if you're neurodivergent, for example, we can use models to develop ways of learning in a personalized way. So you can work and learn based on your individual style, your personal preferences. And so you can remain employable. And that makes a huge difference, I think. I also feel that you can use the AI models, for example, in the talent acquisition space to look at things like comparisons of wages for particular roles. You can identify things like pay gaps. And so you're creating more fairness in the system and more equitable practices. I think there's enormous opportunity for us to use AI in that way.
That's beautiful. And thank you, Matthew, Claudia, Human, and Daniel, for your questions. I'm going to do one more to the panel, and then I'm going to come around to your questions as well. And Rika, I want to throw this one to you. Sue, you and I have talked about this before, but talk a little bit about the importance of private-public partnerships. So in the space of governance and operationalization, I can't speak today, operationalization in AI in both region and in industry. Your thoughts on that particular subject?
Yeah, I was listening to a video, a Bloomberg interview with Jensen, who I remember very fondly. I worked for NVIDIA back in the mid-2000s. Such a trailblazer. And he was talking about sovereign AI. So this idea that now, amidst some of the panic and fervor, it's like, okay, how are countries and governments? And this is on the heels of a lot of the data governance issue, because AI isn't anything without the data. It trains on data. And so with Jensen talking about sovereign AI, it just really drove home some of the dynamics that we need to think about. Both AI and sustainability are cousins in the sense that both are a matter of system design. And when you think about system design, the causal links and the interdependence and interconnectedness of both of those dimensions, call it, because AI and sustainability are kind of apple and orange in the way that we think about what the whole purpose of them, or how they're a tool or an outcome. So I think that these interconnected outcomes of where impacts happen can only really be fostered productively through private-public partnerships. Regulation and policy will be needed because there need to be some guardrails, simply because no one entity is necessarily going to have the information that they need to know what kind of repercussions are downstream within the system design of things. And so those private-public partnerships and some of the things that we're seeing, like at NTT, we work in private sector and public sector.
Yep.
These collaborations are critical. And also, fundamentally, there's some great funding initiatives that are coming from the Inflation Reduction Act or the Green Deal in Europe and things like that. So really being smart about how these orchestrate and figuring out how best practices can be leveraged across the system will be very important. And fundamentally as well, the experts that are able to harness the technology and the things around edge computing, connectivity, and soon satellite and space tech, and how all of those things are really going to connect together and benefit, especially global enterprises, that can only be brought forward to the attention of policy and governments through that collaboration and that transparent communication.
Do you mind if I add on to that?
Please, Wendy, go ahead.
Again, with the association, this is really where we're kind of doubling down on this topic. There's this huge gap that exists today between the regulators and the tech vendors in regards to the actual physical implementations that happen on the ground in companies, whether it's private companies, public company, whatever it is, regardless of industry. Okay. When you've got regulations like GDPR or CCPA, but every company is going through and defining what that looks for them, because the requirements are so kind of high level obtuse, then the regulation almost becomes moot. Okay. So back to, like, there's got to be this real focus on data by design. And if you get data by design, you get AI by design, you can get privacy by design, you can get cyber by design, you can get ethics by design, right? People need to shift the design pieces to the far left. Okay. And frankly, there's not a more critical time than to bring practitioner voice from a perspective to the table. Because again, when it comes to quality, ethical AI type of future, it's the practitioners who have their hands on the physical keyboards who are the front line, okay? And they are the implementers. So I just to double down on what Rika's saying, this has to happen. And there's a huge gap, and AI is a different animal, and we have to tackle this kind of holistically and together.
To learn it. Like completely holistically. I think that's the key word there. Absolutely. I have what I love is a really interesting question in the panel or in the Q&A question for the panel from Renee Gonzalez. Thank you. How do you see AI impacting human interaction, especially around social media and how we interact with each other online? I think that's brilliant. I'm throwing it open. Raise your hand if you'd like to comment. Who wants to take that one as a starter?
You mean who's going to become president in the U.S. this year?
Love that.
I'll take it. I think we could be conversational about it.
Sure, absolutely.
If we look at social media already, there's positives and negatives, right? With social media, I think that people somewhat feel more connected because it's easier to connect. But then again, I think the connection's often a mirage to a degree in regards to deep connections, right? So I think that, AI can be both a positive and a negative in this. It depends on the tool, and it depends on how people end up taking it. But I think that AI can help us to have, deeper connections, more meaningful connections, and build bigger communities. Mm-hmm. But I also think that depending on how people leverage AI to have that conversation, it may not be meaningful. You know what I mean? It may be based on non-truths. I'll give you an example. I don't know how many of you saw at Davos a couple of weeks ago, but Sam Alderman did a report or something about how they want to turn ChatGPT to be configured based on your values. And all I thought was alarm bells going off in my head, being
ding,
like,
ding, 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 ding.
what does that mean? And especially when it comes to social media, you know, deep fakes and alternative truths and a lot of other things. What exactly is a value, and how is social media going to be used to, you know, verify or quantify that value in some type of way, right? So back to earlier when someone said, is AI kind of good, bad, negative, indifferent? I think AI is as good as the people who use it. Right.
Right.
And I think it's a tool, and I think there's got to be controls on the tool or labeling on the tools that help people to understand what's AI generated or not. You know what I mean? But I think it could be both positive and a negative when it comes to social.
Yeah, I think the point is, right, to your point, social can be absolutely fabulous. It could be completely polarizing. It can be, you know, it's what's the input, right, and what's the output. So I thank you for that. And we're getting some really great questions coming in as well. So I'm going to go to Kurt. Question for the panel. What role can policymakers play in promoting sustainable AI practices and preventing negative societal impacts? Or is it more so, as we were just talking about, all on the practitioners? Like, where's the balance? And that's open to whomever may want to comment on that.
I can start with that one.
Please.
For me, I think that the guardrails are essential, because I think that because of typical unconscious bias, it's really important for us to make sure that we are inspecting and doing the right level of diligence to make sure that we're not carrying forward existing inequalities. I think that policy is required around the use of models, not just the design and the deployment or the constantly changing models. But I think there's also space for policy around the people side of things, right? And this is something we don't tend to talk about much. I think there is a place for us to talk about policy as it relates to people whose jobs are displaced by AI. I feel like there needs to be collaboration, open conversation to talk about how we support workers specifically with retraining programs or income support initiatives, as an example, because they've lost their jobs as a result of AI. And I think that's a conversation that every company needs to be having roundabout right now.
Yes, and continuously, yeah.
And not just companies. This is an economic. We're not only in a tool evolution. We're in an economic evolution, right? I mean, I think that society as a whole, how our economies work, are evolving. This is a political topic and an economic topic, not just a workplace topic. There will have to be policies on this for sure.
And people need to have some level of social safetyness, right, when it comes to policy. So I feel like policy needs to be broader than we've been talking about when it comes to people.
I would also.
I think you wanted to say something. Yes, please.
Yeah, I wanted to add a point here, and I think very well said here. But I would like to also add that policymakers also should keep an eye on how the data set is prepared on which the model is trained. Today, we have no clarity, right? We see the model, we just use it. We don't even know what kind of data it is trained on. The data set can be very, very biased, right? Do we have the diverse data set? How the model is trained? There is no transparency around how the model is trained. We just see a paper with some architecture and then the model weights are released. I feel this is very, very risky for the society as a whole. So policy makers needs to put some guardrails, some criteria. Even if the model is released, we should understand I would say, the data set used, what kind of data set is, and then how exactly the model was trained end to end. I don't think secret sauce should be out, but we have to ensure that it is safe to use it. So today there is no metric which can actually say and evaluate the model on safety. right? So I think for a safe AI, it's very important that policymakers think about it.
It's back to what we said earlier about labeling, right? Like there's got to be some type of labeling, because if you think about it this way as well, there's whole industries and companies that have basically built their business on bias.
100%.
Okay.
100%. And so, isn't that terrifying?
Which back to, again, how do you enforce from a policy perspective changes into a business that has grown their business based on who it is they're targeting and bias? Okay. And then how do you label that correctly? I mean, just think about think about it just in the media, right? If you look at what you would get from a Fox News model in regards to viewers, et cetera, versus maybe like a BCC or a BBC or whatever.
BBC, yeah.
Be very, very different, right? So that's the other angle here. Is this is very complicated, not just from a regulatory perspective, but businesses have literally branded based on bias. And now what do you do in regards to bringing that spotlight to it without impacting the business and their business model? It's going to get very, very complicated.
Fun fact, Wendy, I'm definitely going to need you to speak at my event next week, which is on just that topic. Just FYI, stay tuned for an email. Really great question that we could go very deep on here. And there's a couple more I'd like to get to. Question for the panel. Thank you, Daniel Meacham, for the question. How can you ethically utilize AI in promoting sustainability? And what strategies can be employed to build global consensus on these approaches? Good luck with that. Global consensus. Who wants to jump on that one?
Yeah,
I feel like that's a you, Rika, isn't it? No?
I think it's everybody here. Brilliant things to share. I think, for NTT, one of the areas we really dive in deep is around digital infrastructure. And again, going back to the compute and energy consumption that everybody is concerned about with AI and compute, rise of data centers and all that, I think we need to be stewards of how that's done more energy efficiently from an infrastructure perspective. So in the same way that when Bitcoin blockchain, everybody was criticizing it, that was consuming more energy than countries and so on and so forth. Well, Ethereum went from a proof of work to proof of stake. So they made a tweak in the way that something is generated and was able to diminish the energy consumption by 90%. And so I think what we need to do is follow that paradigm to figure out how do we enable the ecosystem of consumption of energy, whether that's ethical or the right thing to do and sustainable, in a way that's going to move things forward. And one of the things that we're focusing on is really looking at photonic ways to be able to create a similar binary on and off that mimics similar to what electrons do, but focusing through photons and being able to enable the digital infrastructure, or not the infrastructure of AI in a way that's going to be more sustainable from an energy consumption and efficiency and minimizing waste perspective in the landscape. So, but that requires a global community to come together, because without the standards, without the frameworks that everybody's going to work towards, and none of that really materializes. If you have a fax machine and nobody else has a fax and it doesn't do people use fax machines anymore? I just realized how dated that stuff is. But I think you get.
No, that is great. And I want to dive down this one too. Human, love the question. Many people are predicting that AI will substantially reduce demand for quote unquote programming. Of course, knowledge, you just asked ChatGPT to write the code. Okay. Multiple companies are working on productivity tools for programmers, but what do you see as the limitations and obstacles to this kind of application? And our, it seems on the face, our ever going trust in ChatGPT or generative AI, et cetera. Have at it, kids. Who wants to take that one? Go ahead, Wendy.
Heather, go ahead if you want to.
I was going to say I can take at least some of it. I do think, like with most roles with AI, things like ChatGPT can certainly help. It can help you start the code. It can help you boilerplate the code. You do not necessarily want to have it write the code for you. This is actually one of the concerns that I've had around AI, especially in terms of training and onboarding, especially for newer engineers or more junior engineers in the field, it's kind of like being able to go to Stack Overflow and copy and paste this line of code. Oh, great, I plugged it in and it worked. Move on, push it to prod, and then 3 days later it breaks. So just because AI has generated the code, you still need the programmers to understand what that code does, how it works, and how to fix it if it ends up blowing up 2 days later and by the time that code reaches production. It is a tool just like everything else. And I think as programmers, you are still making sure that you are responsible for understanding that what are you were putting into your code base. Would be one of my first comments there.
Absolutely. Wendy, did you want to add?
Yeah, to add on, I would say that a machine doesn't understand the business problem, right? I mean, you can go, especially right now with just kind of public LLMs, etc. Well, I can give you tips on the code, etc. It doesn't know your infrastructure. It doesn't know your business strategy. It doesn't understand the gaps or the risk or the people, etc. So there's components here that, again, code's written in order to solve some type of problem, right? A human problem, business problem, a systems problem, whatever it is. And if you don't fully grok the problem, then the reality is that the code's not going to scale or have the impact that you intended to have. So again, I think it's a great tool to help you, once you understand those things, to help you to, write that logic or check your logic or, test logic or see improve performance or whatever that may be. But I would hope that we're not writing code just to write code. You know what I mean? And
right,
we got to write
for code's sake. Exactly.
And the other hard part is a lot of times some of the code that you're writing for is often written previously by folks who were very human, who don't always write the most perfect code in the world, or you're bolting something onto a legacy system, and legacy being anything older than like 5 years. So it's imperfect at best. So you still, it's like we were saying, it's a tool. It's helpful. It might give you some ideas that you didn't think about before, which is also
use it as a tool, not the holy grail, right? We have 2 more questions that I have to get to, and this is like, we could talk about this for hours, but sadly we're running out of time. So we'll have about, I think, 5 more minutes before we have to turn it over to Danny again. So this one's coming from Trevor. Hi all, great discussion. The news, lots of news in the UK this week about deep fakes. Back, Wendy, to what I'm going to have you speak on next week. The mayor of London was recently targeted, and obvious concerns on how they're being used to divide conflicting communities, back to that whole polarization that I mentioned earlier. So how does the panel believe that AI can be used to bring communities together as opposed to pull them asunder or pull them apart? It's a huge question, but anyone would like any thoughts or a magic placebo that's going to fix it all? That would be cool too. Who wants to take that one?
Well, I'll go ahead and add in, since I talked about communities a little bit before.
Right.
Well, again, AI is a tool. So, I think that AI can be beneficial in multiple ways, because I think if we have these labeling things and we really do, design, then we could remove some of the, what do I say? We can remove some of the things that we tend to focus on that differentiate us, right? Like, once we realize we're all human and we all have, we all have the same kind of concept, concepts and goals and directions. We want, housing and safety and food and opportunity and education. Once we start to really focus on the core of what makes us human, which I think AI will help us to do, I think there's a huge opportunity for us to really kind of, really kind of embrace that and really kind of have this new, world of not just innovation, but almost like a renaissance, like a human renaissance, right? Back to
I love that.
amazing tool for actually bringing us together in regards to creativity or education or learning or a million other things. So, I think that those are some of the opportunities that exist when it comes to music or art, or it's going to give us more time. So what are we going to do with that time? Shouldn't we be doing more things together with that time? You know what I mean?
Talk about glass half full. That is a beautiful, very positive, sort of viewpoint on what this technology can do for us. That's fantastic. And we won't be eaten by the robots. So hopefully one last question, possibly two. Shreya, thank you all for sharing your interesting insights. I'm wondering, as professionals in the AI space, how can we, on a day-to-day basis, balance innovation and responsibility to ensure that AI solutions contribute meaningfully to an environmental and other social good? I mean, we've touched on it, but if there's any more sort of thoughts and comments on that particular point. Don't make me call on someone.
Yeah, no, I think it's just about being able to illuminate where it is doing that, right? And being able to tell those stories and have those stories that go into the data, that goes into the models, that then tells what the thing it is that you're looking for. I mean, Dee and I go back, and she's such a masterful storyteller. And so having people like Dee and people that are on the panel here to be able to illuminate the positive outcomes and impacts and to record it is, I think, part of the process and the journey forward, because inspiration only happens through people hearing how it works.
Yeah. And we're probably going to get time to answer this, but I'm going to throw this out to everyone, and not only our panelists, but as food for thought. And as we leave, Anthony Preston came up with a hysterical and thought-provoking question. If you could travel back in time, and maybe this is just a thinker, and give any historical figure access to modern AI technology, who would it be and why? Don't have to answer it today, but I think that's a great thinker, and it sounds like that would be a really cool LinkedIn live post or LinkedIn post for all of us to do.
He's sitting behind you, Wendy.
So I am going to turn it back over to Mr. Danny Cohen. May I just thank each and every one of you. This has been fascinating discussion. Again, not nearly enough time. We could talk for hours and hours, but thank you so much for sharing your brilliance and your insights. And thank you to everyone in the audience for the wonderful questions as well. So over to you, Mr. Danny Cohen.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And thank you to all our panelists today. Clint Hill, one of our audience members, said in the comment, a really informed panel. Thank you. It's just wonderful to hear you all share the valuable insights and expertise today. Your thoughtful contributions have really shed light on what is one of the most important topics, as you guys provided much deeper understanding of the subject. And I know this hour flew by, and I know there's so much more that we can discuss and address, but I just want to say thank you to all of you, and also to our audience. There were so many questions, and we hope that you all enjoyed this discussion. I hope it sparked further curiosity and inspired new ideas among our audience. Remember, the conversation doesn't end today. Let's continue to explore, learn, and collaborate to make a positive impact in sustainability and AI. Thank you all for joining us. And each month, Roc Search will be hosting an event, and I hope it's half as good as this one. And we really look forward to seeing you then. Have a wonderful week, and thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.